The Spiderwick Chronicles is a 2008 fantasy family thriller directed by Mark Waters, who before this had directed acclaimed works such as Freaky Friday, Mean Girls, and Just Like Heaven. It is based on the book series of the same name written by Tony D. Tollerese and Holly Black. It features a score composed by the late, great James Horner, who truly has too many acclaimed compositions to list in this video. But a few of them include the highest grossing movie of all time, Avatar, as well as Titanic, Braveheart, Aliens, The Land Before Time, and Jumanji. Spiderwick Chronicles is about a recently divorced mother who, along with her 3 children, inherit an old house in the country, which is surrounded by and home to a myriad of magical creatures, some nice and some not so much. The long-lost relative Arthur Spiderwick spent his life's work compiling a field guide to these creatures, which is sought after by the evil ogre Mulgarath and his goblin army, as the secrets which lay inside would give Mulgarath great advantage and allow him to destroy the family as well as anyone else who dare oppose him. The story's main protagonist is Jared Grace, the black sheep of the family, who, unlike his twin brother Simon, a peaceful, well-mannered pacifist, struggles with controlling his anger and is far less accepting of his mother's decision to move them from New York City to a mysterious country home. Both twins are portrayed by actor Freddie Highmore, and I've got to say, it's an outstanding performance by the young actor. Highmore's acting prowess, along with some competent editing, truly makes you believe these are 2 separate individuals. The film was well received by fans and critics, with Highmore's performance being praised of the high point of the film. I sure do love me some efficient character introductions, and Spiderwick Chronicles does not disappoint. For a completely self-contained story, which must establish many fantastical elements, efficiency in quickly characterizing our protagonist is paramount, and I love the opening scene which does just that. As the family pulls up to their new home, the film fakes us out a little by first introducing Simon Grace, who I originally assumed would be the main protagonist, given how many of these types of movies feature a nerdy, timid character in the lead role, with the rough-around-edges brother usually serving as some sort of ambiguous antagonist to the story. But as the camera pans over to Jared and his mother confronts him, asking him questions to which he refuses to respond, it becomes apparent he will be the story's main focus. Already 2 minutes into this film, and we are having our expectations subverted. Very nice. Mallory, the boy's older sister, decides to step in. Because of their father's absence, she has to step up and fill the role of dishing out discipline, and often stands up for her mother, playing a parental role in the family dynamic. She provokes Jared, then draws her rapier, and the two engage in a brief duel while arguing. Jared tries to enlist his brother's help, but Simon refuses because he doesn't do conflict. This brief opening scene really tells us so much about our characters in a matter of a couple minutes. We learn that their mother is kind and loving, but emotionally exhausted from the recent divorce, and is trying her best to be positive while adapting to the recent challenges of single motherhood. We learn Simon is an animal lover and is the peacekeeper of the family. We learn Jared struggles with controlling his anger and doesn't adapt well to change, as well as harboring resentment for his mother. And we learn that Mallory is a sporty fencer who embraces her role as the family's new pseudo-parent, but does so in an abrasive manner. I think this is a brilliant example of efficient screenwriting. We learn everything we need to know about the dynamic of this family, as well as foreshadowing the roles and the impending adventure. Absolutely brilliant. So right away, some of the family's items turn up missing, and Jared gets wrongfully blamed. This is followed by a heartbreaking phone call with his dad. See, Jared was expecting his father to come rescue him and take him away to live with him instead of his mother. However, what Jared doesn't know is his dad has already found a new romantic partner, and therefore has no intentions of taking Jared away, or getting back together with Jared's mother. The father has been procrastinating telling Jared this, and so Jared blames his mother for everything, and acts cruelly towards her because of it. This movie certainly pulls no punches, not when it comes to portraying realistic family drama, nor when it comes to trying to scare the pants off of you either. See, I would characterize Spiderwick Chronicles as more horror for kids than I would a carefree fantasy film. After the phone call, the spooky atmosphere takes over, as Jared hears something crawling in the walls, which leads him to discover a secret room, Arthur Spiderwick's study. It's here he discovers the field guide, along with a foreboding note warning anyone who dare read the book, as well as a sentence written out in the dust: "Jared Grace, leave this place." Jared ignores the note, breaks the book's seal, and stays up into the late hours of the night reading the field guide, until he is startled by a blood-curdling scream let out by his sister. Her hair has been tied to her bedpost, and Jared is again unjustly scapegoated for this transgression. Mallory's scream is truly haunting. I thought she was being murdered when I first watched this movie. See, there's two sides to conveying horror in cinema: the horror itself and the character's reaction. Both are necessary to really sell the scare, and I love how in this movie our characters' reactions really convey the direness of the frightening situations they find themselves in. Too many times in movies, we see characters underreact when faced with terrifying situations, but such isn't the case in Spiderwick Chronicles. There's a scene soon after when all three kids are first attacked by goblins, and they absolutely lose their shit, as well as they should. Simon screams out in pain as Mallory pours hydrogen peroxide on his wounds, and the frantic anxiety of everybody's disposition really immerses you into the film. It's great, and not something you see portrayed to such a degree in a, quote, kids film. In fact, this might be the scariest and goriest contemporary film I've seen given the PG rating. I mean, there's some real violent shit here. Multiple times, villains get body parts sliced clean off. Goblins are completely melted and disformed from their tomato soup kryptonite. Mallory stabs goblins in the eye, resulting in a blood-soaked blade. The kids are scratched and bitten. This sort of candid violence is consistent throughout the entire movie, and it's remarkable how this film evaded a PG-13 rating. Fantasy violence is one thing, but at one point, Jared stabs his dad in the chest with a fucking kitchen knife. I mean, Jesus Christ! More on that last part later. So Jared soon makes friends with Thimbletack, the house's residential brownie and former companion to Arthur Spiderwick. Thimbletack's main focus is to protect the book, and he sure gets pissed off when anybody threatens the book's safety. See, Thimbletack is a brownie, but when he gets upset, he grows and transforms into a boggart. Basically, he hulks out and goes berserk, and his anger must be constantly satiated with honey. Thimbletack is voiced by Martin Short, and it's a spot-on casting decision, as Short has the range to oscillate between sweet little critter to monster in a way that really does his character justice. This dynamic is another thing I really enjoy about the fantastical world of Spiderwick Chronicles. The magical creatures which inhabit this world are not so black and white. It's not simply a matter of good versus evil. Instead, everybody is more self-serving and nuanced because of it. Thimbletack can play the role of antagonist if he's in his rage-induced Bogart form. Characters like Pigsqueal the Hobgoblin and the fairies prioritize self-preservation over simply just being companions to our protagonist. I love the pragmatic, nuanced approach. It makes the world so much more realistic and interesting because of it. I also love the designs of the world's various creatures. See, they don't conceal themselves simply with magic, but with mimicry as well. The fairies resemble insects and flowers, the goblins look like toads, and larger creatures like Mulgarath the ogre and the mole troll have branches, moss, and stones on their backs. This not only makes the fantastical elements of Spiderwick Chronicles more believable, but gives the art design a consistent through line which establishes the unique visual identity of the film. So the house is surrounded by goblins, who, however, are unable to penetrate the protective circle of mushrooms, which Arthur Spiderwick put in place long ago. The kids do not want to end up like their great aunt, who spent her entire life never leaving the house and was eventually committed to a sanatorium because of it. So they decide to seek her out for answers on how to destroy the seemingly indestructible field guide. As Mallory and Jared make their way to the sanatorium through a series of underground tunnels, they are pursued by a mole troll, and it's here I have a small gripe. There's a trope in movies when someone, often a human character, is being pursued by some big scary monster, and the only reason they can evade the monster's grasp is because the monster keeps running into stuff, bouncing off walls, and just overall being incapable of what should be a simple task. I don't know, it's not really a fair criticism because I'm not sure what the alternative would be, but this sort of thing always takes me out of the movie. It's very unrealistic. Imagine being able to outrun a gorilla because the gorilla is so inept at carrying its own strength that it just keeps bumping into trees and falling over itself. It's just not how that situation would play out. You'd instead be monkey food in a matter of seconds. Just a small complaint. I still like this scene. It ups the stakes for the second act and creates a sufficiently scary moment to bridge together two different scenes of exposition. Another small complaint I have is when the kids arrive to the sanatorium and the staff remarks, "Nice sword," to Mallory. It's played off as a joke, but it's just so unrealistic it comes across as just dumb. I mean, their aunt is literally committed for what society perceived to be a suicide attempt, but was actually a goblin attack. Like, why have this joke here? Just have her hide the sword or something. Because there's no way in hell, movie logic or otherwise, that staff is going to let a patient's first-time visitor show up with a fucking sword. I think the writers were just trying to get in what jokes they could, in a film that doesn't have many, and this was the best they could do. It's another small critique, but still, something I scoffed at each viewing. So they meet their great-aunt, Lucinda Spiderwick, daughter of Arthur Spiderwick, the field guide's author. She explains how her father, despite now being 125 years old, is still alive. He was whisked away by the fairies to some magical realm where he's being kept alive by their magic, but also kept captive since the knowledge he possesses threatens their existence. There's a heavy theme of knowledge is power in this film, and I absolutely love it. It's so cool to see a film use a book as the greatest source of power. In other movies, it would just be some bullshit crystal that gives you powers, or a sword or something. But here, it's knowledge. Another theme presented at this moment is forsaking the ones you love for your passion. Arthur Spiderwick neglected his daughter because he was so enamored with creating his field guide, which led him to being forced to abandon her for seemingly her entire life. His life's work became hubris. Some pretty complicated themes being presented in this family-friendly film. During the kids' conversation with their aunt, they are ambushed by goblins, who snatch a few pages of the book, one of which details a potion to break the house's protective circle. The family now has only till midnight to find Arthur Spiderwick and to figure out a plan of action for the impending siege. Back at the house, by reading the book, Jared is able to summon a griffin, Arthur's former pet, which flies the children to the magical realm of the fairies. Here Arthur has been kept alive and lost his sense of time. He is unable to provide them with the means to destroy the book, and instead tells Jared, "Tough shit, kid, it's up to you to figure this out." But not before Jared confronts Arthur, forcing him to grapple with the outcome of his actions. There's some hard-hitting lines in this movie, like when Arthur tells Jared the book is his life's work, and Jared screams, "You're 125 years old, your life is over, and your daughter spent her life without a father all because of that book." Or later when Arthur Spiderwick returns to the earthly realm to speak to his daughter and says, "I'm so sorry. I was so captivated by all the magical creatures I found that I lost sight of the one I already had." This movie is filled with so much heart. Instead of just being dumb fun, it never loses sight of its many mature themes. It can jerk a few tears as well as scare you out of your boots. It's a powerful tour de force of emotion, action, fantasy, and horror, constantly exploring relatable family dynamics while simultaneously progressing the story and offering plenty of action set pieces. Its effectiveness in getting you to feel the things at once are further helped by a beautiful score and amazing attention to detail. Take, for instance, something most viewers take for granted, but find themselves affected by anyway: the lighting. The cinematography of this film is nothing short of intentional. When the kids first meet their aunt, at first the scene is brightly lit, conveying the heartwarming nature of their moment of meeting. But as she starts to talk about her traumatic past, the scene moves indoors and a darker hue envelops our characters, despite it still being daytime. During the end of the film, when Jared is apologizing to his mother, they are outside in the pitch black, but the light from inside the house projects a warm color onto his mother's face, symbolizing her warm, nurturing personality. It's something most viewers may not notice consciously, but the beauty of lighting is it penetrates the subconscious, serving to emphasize the intentional feelings of these moments. It's really quite a remarkable film, succeeding at pretty much every front, except the CGI, which is unfortunately a little dated. Speaking of the CGI, there's something I want to discuss. There's a technique applied in this film, which is to have all the CGI characters move in a constant erratic fashion. This is done intentionally to keep the viewer from being able to really focus on the CGI and take notice of all its imperfections and shortcomings. And it got me thinking that there's pretty much two approaches when it comes to representing fantastical humanoid characters. You can either have someone in a costume, which limits the range of movement, but then allows you to have your characters be more still, allowing the viewer to soak in the detail, to revel in the details of creative costume design. Or you can take the Spiderwick approach and have your characters fully animated, but constantly in motion, so you can't make out any fine details. I would still prefer the old school way, because especially in Spiderwick's case, where most CGI characters are of short stature, this would give little people more acting opportunities. I miss the days of Warwick Davis portraying Ewoks and Half-Foots. I think this approach still holds up, and I think the more contemporary CGI approach is often more limiting in its form than simply using real physical actors. Just some food for thought. So there's not much more to say about the story. Now that our characters know the book cannot be destroyed, they are forced to face their adversaries head-on and overcome them. The mom character returns home from work and is brought up to speed with the movie's plot, which means she gets to join in on the fun of the movie's climax as well. As far as female representation, this movie is the perfect antithesis to Zathura. In Zathura, the mother character is completely absent and unimportant, as Zathura only cares about what men can offer. The two brothers' older sister is an annoying, useless nuisance who never gets to help, but is rather being pushed aside for moments of conflict or action. In Spiderwick Chronicles, women are much more important. I like how the older sister is the brawn of the group. Since she is trained in fencing, she's the only one who bears a weapon for most of the movie, and does most of the fighting. The mother character doesn't shy away from defending her home, and instead of being defenseless or in need of constantly being saved, she fights alongside her children in the final battle. What else would you expect from the director of Mean Girls? Women are badass in this movie, and I love it. A much welcome change of pace after covering Aragon last week, I tell you what. There's a scene in Spiderwick's climax which I absolutely love. It's when Mulgarath shapeshifts into Jared's father in an attempt to trick him. Jared confronts his supposed father and demands he tell him the truth. That being that the father is not going to return and instead stay with his new love interest. What's great about this scene is the multiple cinematic goals it accomplishes. Jared not only outsmarts our main bad guy, but gets to do so in a way that gives his character arc closure, as he finally confronts his father for what he is and stops idealizing him. It's just such a satisfying moment because of how multi-layered it is, and what results is Jared stabbing his dad in the chest with a fucking kitchen knife, revealing it was Mulgarath's trick. God damn, if the imagery before didn't warrant a PG-13 rating, surely this does, right? I almost wish Spiderwick Chronicles did have a PG-13 rating, so it wasn't so easily dismissed by adult cinephiles who look down their nose at what they perceive to be movies meant just for kids. I feel strongly Spiderwick Chronicles is a movie that can be enjoyed by any lover of cinema. There's something here for everyone, whether it's the horror, the fantastical world full of creative creatures, or the realistic and relatable family drama that is portrayed along the way. The falling action of this film is an entourage of feel-good moments. Jared and his mother apologize to each other, Arthur Spiderwick is reunited with his daughter, and it's a satisfying ending which neatly wraps everything up. It's followed by an exceptional end credit sequence. Other movies would dish out some pop song, but here we get to revel in more of James Horner's emotionally complex score with some beautiful visuals. Well done, Spiderwick Chronicles, well done. If you like this review, do me a favor and give the video a like. Better yet, subscribe to my channel so you don't miss out on future film analysis. Next week I'll be covering Bridge to Terabithia, and I will soon be tackling my first review of a TV series discussing Star Wars: The Acolyte. Bye!